Welcome to Ex Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real? Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of Ex Machina. Tonight's episode is going to come with a little bit of a warning, folks. For those of you who might be susceptible to this sort of thing, this is going to be a very paranormal involved show. Every one of these creatures are supernatural in origin, and a lot of different cultures believe even talking about them can bring them down on you. So bear that in mind. Light a candle, light some sage, say a prayer, and kick back and relax because it's about to get interesting. Joining me in the studio tonight is Robbie Rip Rains, Ryan the Wendigo guy, and Steve Wildman Monrotis. And a special guest tonight, though those of you have seen him here a couple of times before, is my friend Wes. We work together at the Sheriff's Department. And he's going to bring an interesting perspective tonight. He's of Navajo descent, and he's going to share some of their wisdom with us on this subject. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for joining us. And boys, how y'all doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. How y'all?
Doing all right. Doing all right.
Excellent. Hanging in there.
Good to see you back, Wild Man.
Well,
Yeah, I missed you.
Here.
Wes, I'm glad you joined us, man. I appreciate you taking the time and joining in with us.
Yeah, no problem.
So, first thing, we've got a kind of a myriad of creatures described, all of them from different areas, different types of creatures, but yet still a lot of people confuse them and will think a Skinwalker and a Wendigo are the same thing. A lot of people have never even heard of a Ravenmocker. But while there are similarities between all of these things, there are also broad differences. And we're gonna be touching on both the similarities and the differences tonight, and the things you can or can't do, if you think one's in your area.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, you want to start us off a little bit, telling us a little bit about the lore on all four of these?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a pantheon of, spirits within each tribal belief. And you have, the Skinwalkers, you have the Wendigo, you have the Ravenmockers, the Wechuge. But a lot of people just put them all together and say they're all the same thing. But the interesting thing is, DA, when you really look at the lore and the oral traditions behind it, each one is its own horror story, man. It's something that you just do not ever want to bring upon yourself. And I'm very excited to hear what Wes has to say about the Skinwalkers.
And well, none of them are cryptids. They're all very mystical origin.
Correct. I think what a lot of people forget is that a cryptid is an animal. It's, a biological animal that's unknown, that's rumored to exist. Things like Wendigo and Skinwalkers don't qualify as animals.
Wes, you want to jump in a little? You want to jump in and tell us a little bit what you can?
Oh, when it comes down to the Skinwalkers, they are individuals, shaman, medicine men, and that have been corrupted by greed. Which is a similarity that the Wendigos also share. But with that, the Wendigos, who's from what I understand, and along with the greed, they isolate themselves. And they're succumb to pain whether spiritually or physically or even both. With skinwalkers, it's more of how much power can I gain? How much more power can I get? Both creatures or both things are intelligent, but when it comes down to the motives, skinwalkers are more so, this is my territory, get out. They want to scare people. While Wendigos, from what I understand, they will outright attack people
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
and are highly aggressive.
And it's more about
Absolutely.
hunger with them than it is with greed.
Mhm.
Well, no, he's right, DA, because I mean, with the Algonquin belief, greed is another way that one can fall under the influence of the Wechuge spirit. Cannibalism just happens to be the most popular, the most well-known method of becoming possessed. So he was correct.
So,
The skinwalkers, they how one goes about becoming one. There is they have to commit kind of the trifecta of the heinous crimes. It was murder, rape, necrophilia, and just all sorts of the big criminal acts that is considered evil. That's part of it. And as for murder, part of that is killing one's own sibling, most likely a brother, a blood brother. Then after they kill said sibling, they will take a piece of their skeleton, their bones, and wear it as part of like a necklace.
So in the modern cases, like the case that happened in the late '90s up in Canada, where the guy on the bus attacked and killed a guy, just the guy randomly riding on the bus, and it removed strips of flesh. They referred to that as Wendigo psychosis. Do you think that is a legitimate psychosis, or do you think it's still an example of Wendigo spirit still being around?
Ooh, good question. I'd say yes and no. I think there's cracks in that armor when they use the Wendigo psychosis defense, but I do think that there's also some Wendigo presence in situations like that.
3D Havoc says, "Is the Skinwalker the first steps before becoming a Wendigo?"
No, absolutely not.
Two different sides. Wendigos are northeast, skinwalkers are southwest. Is they don't mix with each other. They're that they're similar. They're totally different. And it's kind of like telling the difference between a American and Britain. Yeah, we look similar, but we talk different, and our motives are totally different.
Right.
Or French Canadian meeting it with like a Louisiana Cajun. Yeah, there's some French similarities, but that's as far as it goes.
I'm both of those.
That's an excellent point, though, Wes. I mean, and like this is my big gripe with like Hollywood, the movie Skinwalkers, and it being about a bunch of werewolves. I can't stand the way everybody just lumps everything into one. Well, this is what it looks like. This is what it acts like. Well, it must be this. So this is why I like having a show like this where we can spread everything out and get to the similarities, but also the differences too, so people know what the difference is.
That's an interesting point, though, Robbie. A lot of people think that, the skinwalkers are werewolves, but really, the only two things that they have in common is that they were a person at one time and that they shapeshift.
Yeah.
With the real skinwalkers, they're just as common as you and I. You're not going to know that one of these people is a skinwalker unless they want you to know.
Yeah, and who's to say that they can't turn into a wolf or a werewolf or a dogman or whatever? But just people, just like having that movie titled Skinwalkers, and it was actually about werewolves, just drives me up the wall. And
Well, from my understanding, and Wes, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the skinwalker requires the pelt of that very specific animal to become that animal. So to become a dogman, he or she would have to kill a dogman. Am I right on this, Wes?
To become a animal, they have to carry the pelt of said animal. So the most common in a pelt that they'll they'll carry on them would be a coyote, because that's what's
Yep.
prevalent.
Yep.
And if they find a wolf and kill a wolf, they'll wear the pelt of a wolf. If find a bird, or such as like a raven, crow, roadrunner, they'll take it and carry it with them. Yeah, but
What if a true skinwalker were to kill and skin a Bigfoot? Could it become that?
Hmm.
could there when I looked at a map of Bigfoot sightings and Skinwalker sightings, there is some overlap between the two. So there is possibility that could happen.
I know that on the Navajo reservation in New Mexico, there are a lot of Bigfoot sightings. Jesus Payan was investigating some of them, and some of them are violent,
Mm.
Hmm.
You know, and
including people that have gone missing.
Okay. Wow.
that's one of those things that it's so on the nose that you almost miss it. Skinwalker. It has to have whatever it wants to turn into. It has to have a skin of whatever it wants to turn into to walk in that form. I mean, that is like literally on the nose of what it is.
Yeah. Exactly. And
You
I mean,
almost
even
miss it.
the translation of the name too, by means of it, on all fours he goes. I mean, come on, can't
It
disregard
would
that.
just so basically oh they can even take the form of other people, can't they?
Yes, they can. They can also mimic the voices of other people.
Hmm.
Well,
That is
how do you know if one is stalking you?
you'd
You won't.
come down. You'd come down ill. Bad things start coming up over and over and over. You have
Especially
and
if they use that
what
corpse powder.
whatever that you do is not fixing or fixing the remedy, the situation.
Hmm.
Then you have to see about, okay, there might be one of these coyotes. Is what I refer them to. Might be one of these coyotes around, and I need to basically rebalance myself of cleanse myself using burning cedar, sweetgrass, pure tobacco, not this mixed up shit that's around.
So,
And
Wes, I know we kind of talked about this last time you were on the show, but we've got some new listeners. Uh, what's your take on the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders and that being or not being a skinwalker? Because that's one of my favorite cases, paranormal or just plain investigation point. Anyway,
I think it's something else. It's not with skinwalkers. They honestly they don't kill. They're a pain. They make people miserable, but it's very rare for them to kill other people. They would rely on the victim to kill themselves.
Yeah.
Then they would do it. And with that, they the way that they act is they find one victim. They don't go at a group. Uh, it's weighing the risks. It's like yeah, how much risk am I taking in doing this act and possibly getting harmed, killed,
Hmm.
or found out what I am. Because if there's any survivors and they switch back to their human form, and it's someone they recognize,
well,
then they're done.
Yeah.
could it have been the maybe it wasn't the he wasn't completely there yet, and that was just the end of his path to that because of the
No.
The heinousness of the crime.
the heinousness and the evilness of the crime of what was committed. Could that been what it was, or do you think it was just something together different from start to finish?
I think it's something entirely different. It's only one act of one murder, and it has to be of their blood sibling or blood brother.
Hmm.
And also, when it comes to these skinwalkers, how they become one, it's all male. there's no female skinwalkers. It's all male skinwalkers.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Wendigos, it can flip between both female and male, just depending on the situation and what that entity it has available to basically possess and take over.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned earlier, Wes, that in addition to be able to assume the appearance of these various animals, they can also assume the appearance of other people. What do they have to do in order to assume that person's identity? You mentioned like pelts of coyotes and pelts of wolves to become coyotes and wolves. How do you become a particular person?
They would sit back, watch, and act like a mimic. They have
Gotcha.
and be very close. Basically, staking out the individual, uh, kind of watch their behaviors, see how they talk, and along with that, they'd go to the dwelling and search for any possessions of theirs. There's that's been tossed out or is just outside the building. And my grandpa on my mom's side, there's one time that he thought there was a skinwalker outside his house. And went out with a shotgun in the middle of Salt Lake City, yeah, and just shot at a trash can because he believed that there was a skinwalker taking stuff out of the trash can to cause problems or mimic one of my aunts or uncles. Turns out it was just a cat. It was the neighbor's cat,
Oh.
but still, and with the
Why
skinwalker,
is it that,
go ahead.
skinwalkers are only males?
It's just because of Navajos. There's a medicine man. When it comes to shamans or medicine, and the individuals, they're all male.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of almost a bit taboo for there to be a female, or a woman, a medicine woman.
And are skinwalkers restricted to just that area, or can they be found anywhere?
There has been sightings outside, but the main hotspot is around the Navajo reservation, and that's where they typically reside. Now
But they can travel?
they can travel. I mean, if they're just like us, they said they can go further out from the Navajo reservation, the Navajo Nation, and be
So what,
seen possibly in others. It's just, but they
what I
try to
was told
stay
though,
close.
what I was told is like they have to stay within the 4 sacred mountains.
Could, but with modern times
Mm-hmm.
and an amount of time that some of these skinwalkers have spent because they're essentially immortal. They probably found a way to get out.
Hmm.
And the only way that you can kill these things is by figuring out its actual name. Then
Mm-hmm.
death will come to it.
And if they're a
So
couple centuries old, good luck finding its real name.
yeah, and if they're that old, they obviously found found ways to bypass so the restrictions stuck with them.
Hmm.
When they live that long, and I'll say they're smart enough, if intelligent enough, not to be found.
So, what are things you can do to keep one away?
So you can, if you sense that there's one and that's coming around, burn cedar, sage, sweetgrass, pure tobacco, or just and pray, meditate. It's all about trying to harmonize yourself with your surroundings. The thing feeds off of negativity in a way and just amplifies it. So
Would a blessing way keep one away?
it would the it is a way to kind of balance yourself.
So opposed to, the Ryan, this question's for you. you've heard kind of some of the, I won't call them weaknesses, but some of the limitations. What about the Wendigo? Can it go? Because what we were talking about earlier, somebody said they saw one in Arizona, but traditionally they stay or around colder areas. Is that something that they just prefer, or can they do? Or what is?
Honestly, I think it's the power of the land. I think being a Pawaganok that the Algonquins believe in, it needs to stay on its home turf, because if it strays too far away, that power weakens the further and further away it goes. So, a Wendigo that's in Canada right now, right? If it traveled down from Canada to Arizona, its power is going to be nothing, because it needs that cold weather. It needs that land from Canada to power itself up. So it would be
What
weak
if
as
it's
a
down to the land somewhere else?
I don't think the power works that way, though. I think there's a certain power to the Canadian land. That's where the tribes are. That's where the Algonquin exists. That's where they flourished. So I think that it derives its power from the old people there, the ancient peoples. So I think going anywhere else.
There have been Wendigo reported sightings in Colorado, in the Pacific Northwest, and in the Appalachians as well.
Yeah, but when you look at the type of Wendigo being seen, they're talking about the stag-headed, fur-bearing creature. That's not a Wendigo. That's not even a knot deer. That's nothing that the Wendigo was like. In order for there to be a cannibal or a Wendigo, there has to be a cannibal for it to possess and take form in that human body. It can't just pop out of nowhere.
So what are these people seeing then? In your opinion?
I don't know. I'm not sure what they're seeing. They could be seeing a mimic, maybe. Maybe
I know in northern Colorado there was a Girl Scout camp was closed because of sightings right in and near the camp.
But they were saying that it was like a white-skinned being, though. So we don't know if that was actually a Wendigo or even a crawler. So when we see a crawler or a pale crawler, as they're called, we're calling them Wendigo right away. Are they Wendigo? Probably not.
Well, I think the quote-unquote pale crawler was more of a creepypasta, but I think if people are seeing these things, it may be some type of Wendigo.
No, pale crawlers are not creepypastas at all, not by any means. In Arizona, they talk about them, actually, and they call them the people before the people. And according to the legends here, they were people that abandoned the human ways. So they weren't a creepypasta, DA. They were actually part of the historical beliefs. The rake is the creepypasta, okay? The pale crawlers, on the other hand, pale crawlers are rooted in reality. The rake is made up for 4chan and all these other channels. So,
I understand then they act more animalistic.
Yes.
But what about the Wechuge?
The Wechuge, what that is, it's similar to a Wendigo in a way, in the sense that it's a giant that's a cannibal giant. And like the Wendigo, every time it claims a victim, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But here's the twist. With a Wechuge, unlike the Wendigo, you can turn into one by allowing somebody else to starve. So if you're somebody who's well-to-do and you've got plenty of food, and somebody's asking you for something to eat, and you turn them down, the Wechuge spirit can actually possess you from turning them away.
And the Ravenmocker?
The Ravenmocker, that's a scary one. I want to save that one for last, because there's a lot to go over with that one.
I just can't help but wonder, with so many similar creatures that are reported across the different tribes and across the U.S. It makes me wonder if there might be one creature behind all of those stories.
It's hard to say yes to that, because if you look at the depictions of different things, there's similarities, but there's differences too, though.
That's true, but when you look at different tribal interpretations of Bigfoot, there's similarities and there are differences.
That's true too.
Thank you for the super chat, Josh. He says about the historic areas of the tribe on cryptids, much like animal ranges. He says, what about? He says, Wes, what about historical areas of a tribe on cryptids, much like animal ranges? Do you think cryptids have ranges? I think that's what he's asking.
Okay.
When it comes to cryptids, they do act in a way like an animal. They will set up their own territory. They will stick to that territory. And if something bigger comes around, now of course they're going to try and fight it, or they'll just relocate. It's with Bigfoot, obviously they're moving around, and with the seasons, and heading north and south depending on the weather.
Well, any
But
big
they're
predator like that, much like a grizzly bear or any other large predator, if it stayed confined to a small area, within a very short amount of time, there would be no food left for it.
That's
They
true.
have to follow the prey animals. They have to continually have a range, otherwise they'd pick an area clean.
Hmm. Yeah, but with skinwalkers, though, that wouldn't really apply because the skinwalkers don't eat the people; they torment the people.
Yeah. So they're pretty much, when it comes to skinwalkers, they'll stick their main hotspot is the Navajo Nation, the Navajo Reservation,
Yeah.
and that's where their beliefs is. That's where they can cause is the most harm, and the amount of space that they have to roam. Your nearest neighbor is probably 10, 20 miles away.
Yeah. It's vast out here,
Yeah.
man.
So people are very isolated on the Navajo Reservation.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's
we've had
easier
a
to
couple
find.
people asking what creepypasta is. You want to explain that too, so they'll or you
Man,
around.
go ahead. I'll let you give them your definition of creepypasta. Because I kind of lump some things in with creepypastas that may not necessarily be creepypasta, but go ahead.
Just call it bullcrap.
It's basically creepy stories made up for the internet, and
Yeah.
I throw a lot of researchers in with that same subject, but that's just me.
Yeah, actually brings up a good point too that the Wendigo are more often a spirit, and to kind of tap in on that, like with the Wendigo, the Algonquin, the Cree, and the Ojibwe, they believe you can also be cursed by a shaman to have a Wendigo thrown upon you, so he can curse you, so you have nightmares of the Wendigo, causing you to go insane.
The Wendigo is a Ojibwe legend as well, and there were Ojibwe tribes as far south as where I'm at now.
That's true. That's true. But they actually, once they started coming down here to where our states are now, though, that's when they started shedding the belief of the Wendigo because the winters weren't as harsh and food wasn't as rare as it was up in Canada, though. So the competition wasn't as fierce.
Sure, but we do have some pretty nasty winters on occasion, and I know some
We do, but
very
not quite like up there in Canada, though.
true. Our winters haven't been as bad of late, but I remember when I was a kid, I can remember winters where we had snow, deep enough to build forts in. I mean,
Right.
we used to
Well,
get
you
a lot
got
of
to remember too, though. With Canada, there's like just endless woods, endless wilderness, and even though there's all this terrain and all these trees and everything, it doesn't mean that you're going to find food. Especially during the winter, you may not walk out there and find something to kill so you can eat. So starvation was a very serious threat up in that area.
Very true. Hey, we're coming up on the bottom of the hour. We're going to play a quick message from Doc over at Dark Angel Medical. And then when we get back, I'm going to do a quick giveaway. We're going to give away 5 guest memberships to the channel. So, if you guys are not subscribed, you might want to subscribe now because YouTube, the algorithm does it randomly from people who are subscribed to the channel. But it will give away memberships, and we'll be doing that here in just a minute. So let's hear a word from Doc.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
And folks, make sure you check everything out over at darkangelmedical.com. Everything from classes to kits. I carry one of their kits all the time as part of my daily everyday carry, and I even have a kit in my car. Trust me, the last thing, if in a bad situation, you want to be without is a med kit if you really need one. It's kind of like a parachute. It's better to have one and not need it than need one and not have it. So check out darkangelmedical.com. I can't tell you what the discount code is yet. We haven't gotten a new one from Doc, but let them know that you heard about them from us, and I'm sure they'll take care of you. So check out darkangelmedical.com and get yourself a good kit. Now, who's interested in the channel memberships?
Ooh, fire away.
Hit them up. Sure.
We're about to give away 5.
Sweet.
And here we go. We randomly selected by YouTube. It's like John Temprine, Henry White Jr., Don Combs, Wes Stump, and Lisa Fink.
I think it's yep.
Congratulations, all the winners. And folks, we'll be doing this every month. I can give away 10 a month, and we'll be doing this every month. Well, we gave away 5 last month. We gave away 5 tonight. So congratulations to everybody that won. Thank you guys for being part of the DAX MachiNation. The Wechuge. You said you can become cursed as a Wechuge just by negligence, not necessarily by cannibalism itself.
Correct. Correct.
So that's a deviation. And what tribal area of origin does that come from?
Well, the Wechuge is Athabascan belief, so that's not too far from us at all. Actually,
So those are neighboring tribes.
Yeah, but the description for the Wechuge, that's another difference with the Wendigo, is it's not depicted as a pale, emaciated human being. It's someone that literally turns to ice. That's what the name means, is heart of ice. So when somebody becomes a Wechuge, they essentially turn into Iceman from the X-Men. Their skin turns into ice, and they become this monster that becomes cannibalistic, and it's so hungry that it keeps feeding on people, and the more that it feeds, the bigger it grows. Now, this is where it gets interesting, though. When you want to kill a Wechuge, the only way to do that is to hold him down onto a fire until he completely melts away. That's the only way you can kill a Wechuge.
If it's particularly large, you're going to need a big fire.
That's
That's why
aggravating.
it's a flamethrower.
Kidding.
I was going to say, somebody order some thermite.
Mm-hmm. Or find Godzilla real quick.
And mix up some napalm.
Mm-hmm. Not something you'd want to run into by any means.
Yeah, I would definitely be mixing up some homemade napalm for that.
Yeah.
You know what I'd be doing? I wouldn't be around. I'd be running away, going to the warmest place I could find, and just staking up in Florida or California, going, "Hey, Wechuge, come get me now."
Not a lot of Wechuge in Fiji.
Right. I mean, if it can't catch you, it can't eat you.
Good point.
Unask the AO sounds like a great plan.
Yeah.
Henry White says they do have some 12 gauge fire loads. True. Dragon's breath rounds may not be their friend.
Yeah, but I'm a small dude, man. Could I really even hold a gun that's going to fire off something like that? I'd probably go flying back.
If you can shoot most rifles, you can shoot a 12 gauge. You just got to brace yourself. They don't recoil like an artillery piece.
Okay, good.
It ain't like a 4-bore or anything like that. Shoulder fire.
Yeah. I was shooting 12 gauge
with white hoppers.
I was shooting and hunting with a 12 gauge when I was 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I would like to see
Just get yourself
Ryan brace up and fire a 4-bore.
That would be pretty humorous for any of us. It's going to knock us on our butts.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd be like that little
Yeah,
old lady from Police Academy, flying backwards after I shoot.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
was it 250 pounds of felt recoil? Isn't that what they say with the
400, I think. 400 pounds, or no, 250 pounds of felt recoil, I think. But now that that
I
fat,
don't even weigh 250.
that 950 that he's got almost equals that.
My KSG's got some pretty good recoil, but I'm about to swap out the muzzle brake. There's a company called V6 Industries that makes a muzzle brake for the KSG, and it's supposed to reduce like 75% of recoil and 90% of barrel climb.
Hmm. Okay. So I do have a question
Say,
for
Ryan,
West.
just get yourself a good compensator, you'll be fine.
I've got a question for you, West. So I did hear a story about a woman here who was made sick by a coyote, shall we say. But this coyote was a woman. So is there some way that this woman was working around the rules to become a coyote?
Like I said, when it comes down to coyotes, they're pretty much all male. So if anything, it might have been someone trying to be a Wendigo, because they're more open to have both male and female. And there are practices that I've heard about. One of them is as one part of practice of becoming Wendigo is saying doing a ritual, chanting, and casting a spell on themselves or something like that. So I would say that woman and was going a different route, not to become a skinwalker, but to become a different cryptid, more along the lines of a Wendigo.
Well, curses like that, though, usually aren't something that brings a Wendigo curse onto an individual. So this woman, if she wanted to become Wendigo, she would have to enact in cannibalism against the person I'm talking about right now. So I would say that maybe it was just black magic, perhaps.
Maybe, or she just started.
Okay. Well, would it be possible for a woman to learn the dark arts like that to become a female coyote?
It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Okay.
It's rare, extremely rare. But pretty much all the stories that I've heard of, been told, and what I've researched, they're all male.
So she could be that exception to that rule, because I know the person I spoke to who had this encounter with this mystery woman, her own tribe believed that she was a coyote so much that she was run off of her property and they burned her house down.
Now, where exactly was this report?
This was in a part of Arizona. I could tell you the exact location and messages on Facebook later on after the show.
Okay. Yeah, it would be within
This is
the
a
area.
recent thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, the person I spoke to, this only happened within the past 5 years. So it was a very recent thing.
Now,
Could be a case of mistaken identity also.
well, I think you were going to the same place I was, Wes. Could it have been somebody who has changed genders, or is assuming another gender?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
I may have to look into that.
When it comes to skinwalkers, there is one held belief that it's like one reason why we don't talk about them is because, or talk about them to strangers, is that there's a possibility that stranger might be a skinwalker and is looking for their next victim.
Okay, there you go.
And if someone from the outside moved into the area, such as someone new, if moving in and brand new family and they're not related to anyone that's in the community, they just moved in, they'd be considered a stranger, and that there would be the higher possibility of mistaken identity that person might be a coyote when there's something else going on.
Just sitting here listening to this, though, a lot of this and a lot of these same beliefs are shared for the Rougarou. I have Cajun relatives, and I've heard some of them talk about it openly, and I've heard some of them, they're like, no, we don't talk about that stuff. For the same reason.
Well, with anything that's spiritual, Robbie, whoever believes in it, they're going to be very reluctant to speak about it because acknowledging it can bring it to you. It's giving it credit. Right. It's paying it credit.
That's what I was about to say is, just like Wes was just saying, they don't talk about it because they believe talking about it will invoke it or manifest it, or whatever you want to say. And then there's some that are like, well, that was kind of like what Wes said, back in the old days, that's what they believe, but we don't believe that way now. But if you really look into these legends, a lot of them carry a lot of the same things, like we were talking about earlier. A lot of the same belief system of don't speak about it. And I've even heard some of the Chinese and Japanese folklore and stuff like that, or things like you don't speak about it because speaking it will speak it into existence, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like when we talk about Bigfoot, there's always seems to be a tie, no matter where you go or what creature you're talking about. They've all got ties with each other. There's similarities, there's differences, but there's always some common traits and some commonalities that pop up, and it goes back to that same thing that I throw out there. It's that way for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
People around the world that didn't have the Googles back then, they weren't sitting there talking about, hey, well, I think I'm going to start this little hoax up about this, and it's going to say this. So if you want to use it, they didn't have that back then. So for these things to have all these commonalities, there's got to be a reason for it. From different corners of the world, there's a reason. Draw your own conclusions. I know what my conclusion is.
Mm-hmm.
But how common is it, Wes, for somebody from one tribe who moves to be accepted into another tribe? Could that have a bearing on why we're seeing some of these supernatural critters in places that are outside their normal hunting range, if you will?
When it comes to one person moving from one tribe to another, I mean, there would be some feeling of being an outcast. And so, because you're not related to anyone there. You're, I mean, just like starting a new job. You're new there. You don't know anything, and you're going to be considered a outcast.
Yeah,
And very isolated. And if strange stuff starts happening, well, who's the blame? The new guy.
Yeah.
The outsider.
And a lot of the tribes,
easy cop out.
there were tribes that were very friendly to one another, and then there were tribes that hated each other. I mean, some areas just being like, for example, the Navajo and the Ute, they hated each other.
Yeah, and there's also the Navajo with the Anasazi. The Navajo was enslaved by the Anasazi until the Navajo rose up and killed their leader with a stab to the head, and rose up.
And even within the same tribe, different clans within the tribe may go to war with each other. There were a couple of clans of the Apache that couldn't stand each other. I remember it was I want to say the Hikaria and the Yavapai, if I remember correctly. I could be 100% wrong about that, but I think it was the Hikaria and the Yavapai didn't get along at all.
Yeah, you're right. You're correct on that.
And they were technically part of the same tribe. They were just different war bands of the same tribe.
There's one little joke that tends to go around and on or near the reservation where in school, some guy will stand up and say, "Yeah, what clan are you?" And everyone will start saying their clans, and it's just so that they're not dating their cousin.
That's funny. Someone in the chat brought up an interesting question. Said, "I believe the Navajo is a derogatory name given to them by the Ute. Is that true, Wes?"
It's a name that was given by the Spanish.
Spanish?
Yeah, because
if
the Navajo was the Navajo.
If I remember correctly, the Navajo word for themselves is Dene, isn't it?
Yes, which is translated to the people.
Mm-hmm.
But the word Navajo comes from Spanish. It's conquistadors that went through the area.
One of the interesting things I found when now that we've mentioned Dene is, down in Arizona, down in the Superstition Mountains, there is a valley that's known as the Headless Valley, where bodies were found missing the heads.
Yep.
And if you go to the other end of the Rockies up in Canada, there is another valley that is known as the Headless Valley, the Nahanni Valley, where bodies have been found missing the heads. And the tribe that lives in that area calls themselves the Dene.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, is when the tribe moving down and across the land bridge back in ancient times, and they would spread out. And who say that it's a distant, I guess, tribe or off branch or a ancient off branch of Navajo is still residing in that area, and while the rest moved down and into the deserts.
There you go.
I had a question from Greg and then reposted by 3D Havoc. What are some of the things they refer to it like kryptonite, things you could carry that might repel them?
As far as Wendigo or Skinwalkers go?
I'd say both, probably.
Like a medicine pouch or something along those lines?
There's nothing really that you can carry with you other than just your own actions. And so you can burn some cedar now when needed, but there's nothing really that you can do to stop one. Once one uses you as its victim, and you really can't stop it. If you can fend it off when you get home, because it won't enter your home.
Mhm.
And just wait it out till it gets tired or bored and moves on.
That could be a long time too.
You
Yeah.
mentioned that one of the ways to keep them at bay was to meditate and to remain centered, to center
Mhm.
yourself.
Yeah.
Does that tie in to the Navajo tradition of, instead of saying goodbye, saying walk in beauty?
Yeah, it's with Navajo tradition, it's all about harmony. Yeah, harmony and with yourself, the nature, land, and basically all living together. Anything that upsets that, you have to go about trying to remedy it or find a fix for it. When it comes to skinwalkers, when they come about, there means to upset that. You have to find ways to correct that and rebalance. And
So they throw everything
everything.
out of balance.
Yeah.
The same could be said for a Wendigo. A Wendigo spirit, if it's eating people, it is nature out of balance.
Absolutely.
So and I think similar with the Wechuge and even the Raven Mocker. If there was a
Mhm.
balance to the nature of the area, then these things wouldn't even exist there.
Well, with the Kalanu Akarinsky, the Raven Mocker, it's a lot different. So what the Raven Mocker is, it's one of their night goers. It's a spirit, an invisible spirit that it preys on people in order to lengthen its own mortality. So essentially, it can remain immortal as long as it eats the hearts of the sick and the dying. Now, it's said that the Raven Mocker can actually eat the heart without even breaking the skin. So this is how spiritual this thing is. And
Like
the only
when
person,
Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom, Kalima.
Kalima, yeah. So the Raven Mocker would love to see you're going to touch the hearts of many. He'd be like, yay. But they can eat the hearts without even breaking the skin, and they torment and they abuse the sick and dying. And only that person that is sick and dying can see the Raven Mocker that's after them. Now, your only reprieve from a Raven Mocker is a medicine man. Now, only a few medicine men had the ability to see these invisible spirits. So when you found one that could see the Raven Mocker, what he would do is he would set up 4 stakes, wooden stakes in your house with the points facing up, and he would make a line with sacred tobacco. This tobacco would act like a tripwire. So when the Raven Mocker tried to enter your home, the spikes would go shooting up into the Raven Mocker and make him flee. And then what the medicine man would also do, he'd take a hit of his tobacco and he would blow the smoke in your house, because the Cherokee believe that when you smoke, your prayers are carried up to the creator when you exhale that smoke. So it's the medicine man's prayers being carried out to the Raven Mocker and making him push away. And it's also said that if the medicine man can actually see the physical manifestation of the Raven Mocker will die within 7 days. So it's a lot different from Wendigo.
Now, there's a lot of mention of sacred tobacco. And in the Cherokee tradition, there's even a mention of an old tobacco or an elder tobacco.
Yeah.
What's the difference? What's the difference between the tobacco you can buy that's in a modern cigarette and pure tobacco or elder tobacco? What's the difference?
Simply put, the elder tobacco is pure. There's no chemicals put in. There's no carcinogens put in there. No menthol put in. It's the pure tobacco that they grew and shredded themselves. So it is 100% clean with no additives or anything like that. That's the elder tobacco.
When I was a kid, I lived down in New Mexico for a number of years. I had quite a few friends who were of Native American descent while I lived down there. And when we would go out riding horses, or I worked on a ranch for a while, they would point at plants and say, that's wild tobacco. And is that what you're talking about? This wild tobacco that grows?
Yeah. You got to remember that when they use that wild tobacco, they didn't add anything to it. They just let it dry and they shredded it up. They didn't add anything to that at all.
So that was wild tobacco, the elder tobacco?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I have a friend who's Dene, and he will not smoke a cigarette. If you try to give him a normal cigarette, he'll just look at you like, I don't want that crap. Unless it's the elder tobacco, get it away.
Okay, I find that
interesting,
really fascinating, because there are places here in Missouri where that wild tobacco grows too. I've seen it while out hiking in the woods, but it's pretty rare. I mean, you don't see it every day. It's not something you can drive down the highway and see it on the edge of the road. You've got to be looking for it, and it's kind of in the wilder areas. So I think next time I come across some of that in the field, I may dig some of it up by the roots and pack it home and plant it in my yard.
There you go.
Sounds like a trip through the Mark Twain.
Yeah, yeah, it's exactly where I saw it. You know those trails, West. You know those trails out by trying to remember the name of that little town, Chadwick.
Yeah,
I saw it.
Live not too far from there.
Yeah, I saw it growing alongside a trail in a creek bed, not far from not far outside of Chadwick.
Very nice. Grab some for me, man.
Okay. Now, when it comes to things like the blessing way, or performing a sweat, what significance does the tobacco and peyote serve with those? And will they keep a skinwalker away?
The tobacco is a offering to the afterlife, to the spirits, to God, gods. That's what it is.
Yep.
Is in a way build a connection, with said gods and spirits. When it comes to peyote, it's more of a seeing past the veil and seeing inside of you. It is
I would love to take part in a sweat. I really would.
With the sweats, it's the way that it's designed around is to force your body, stress your body to the point that you're seeing hallucinations, and in a way, seeing visions. Yeah, it is a cleanse, but it's also pushing your body to its edge. Where you're beginning to basically see past the veil, both of yourself and that other dimension that the spirits live in.
That's exactly why I would like to do it.
Careful, you might see something you don't want to see.
Actually, I'm hoping to see something I do.
Well,
but I would definitely have to get in better shape first. Otherwise, I would just stroke out. That would be the end of it.
Where's the air condition?
Well, that and get me too close to the any kind of a fire, and I'll just burn for a month.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Ravenmocker, that's a Cherokee legend.
Yes.
What about Wechuge? What you said that was Athabascan?
Yep. And you
And-
got the Wendigo, which is Algonquin, Cree, Ojibwe.
Well, the Cree are in an area very near where not only the Sioux ranged, but also the Cheyenne. So
Mhm.
could that bleed over into theirs as well?
I mean, I guess it could, but I don't know if the belief would be exactly the same or if it would be altered in some way. That's a really good question.
I'm sure every legend changes a little from tribe to tribe. The reason I ask that is because the area where I live right now, where Steve and I are at, all of this area was Osage land, and the
Mhm.
Osage are a tribe of the Sioux.
Yeah.
In fact, their language is similar, but not exactly like Lakota or Dakota. They have a very similar language.
True. Okay.
So that
So
could
similar
explain why there's some of those same legends exist in Missouri.
You could, yeah.
Well, just like the Spanish coming over here and it morphing into different dialects and the cultures developing into its own versions, and it has similar beliefs, but there is some stark differences between the two.
Absolutely.
Same you said with the tribe, with the tribes moving around. I mean, you got Eastern Cherokee and Western Cherokee or Oklahoma Cherokee. That they're basically the same tribe. They have their own differences and beliefs.
Mhm. Yeah. I think a good example of that is when you look at how the Europeans kind of interwove their werewolf belief with the Wendigo lore.
Mhm.
That's a really good example of how things change drastically.
Any two cultures that come into contact, if it's more than just a brief contact, there's going to be a blending of stories when they share their lore, when they share their legends. A lot of these legends will cross over into the cultures, but that doesn't
Yep.
necessarily mean that they're not seeing it. They're just seeing a version of it. Um, for example, and I know this is a work of fiction that I'm citing, but it
Uh-oh.
makes a lot of logical sense when you start talking about the book American Gods. That to me kind of really explained it, how the practice of the Vikings first coming here brought Odin to these shores, and he never left, or at least an aspect of him never did.
Mhm.
A great example of that is the Heavener runestone in southern Oklahoma. Down in southeast Oklahoma, in a little town called Heavener, is a runestone, a Viking runestone that was carbon dated to the 8th century. That's 600 years before Columbus set foot on this continent.
Wow.
That means the Vikings made it as far inland as Oklahoma. And there was a farmer uprooted a Viking runestone in Minnesota that dated to the 9th century.
Hmm.
And there was a study done on tribes of the Lakota, different war bands of the Lakota, and some of the words that they use have Viking origin.
Yeah. I mean, same with the Blackfoot. The Blackfoot used some of the French terms, like Rougarou. That was a mispronunciation by the Blackfoot. It wasn't their term. It was a mispronunciation when they tried to say the Loup-garou. That's how we got the term Rougarou.
I wonder if there's
that's just
any
Cajun accent, I think.
Chinese that's mixed in,
They're
because
very
there
well.
was Chinese. If there's in California, there was some old Chinese anchors, ancient Chinese anchors that was found, and
Well,
years ago.
I read a book about Lewis and Clark, and it said when they first started exploring west of the Mississippi, they encountered a tribe along the Missouri River. That's here in the Missouri River Valley. They encountered a tribe, a Native American tribe, and I'd have to find the book that's on my shelf back here behind my green screen. I'd have to dig it out to tell you the name of the tribe, but the language that they spoke was a derivative of Celtic.
Interesting. Hmm.
It was a deliberate a derivation of Gaelic spoken language.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, that just goes to prove what we said about, all these cultures being tied together. There's a reason for it. There's a reason that all these legends or whatever have all these commonalities, is because there's a common thread.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we act like North America became a melting pot after the Europeans came here. I would wager it's probably a melting pot before then.
Way before then.
When the Aztecs, during the Aztec civilization, when the conquistadors got to Tenochtitlan, which is modern day Mexico City, it had canals, it had a plumbing system, and it was a city of over 250,000 people. But they don't mention that in the historical text. There's like the Europeans came here and and I'm sorry, they're using this term deliberately. They brought civilization to the savages, but it was absolutely dead wrong. There were civilizations on this continent long before Europeans set here. You've got the mound builders, you've got the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans, the Toltecs. They all had massive civilizations that we just completely sweep under the rug and ignore.
And there's the legend of El Dorado that was spread around and caused the deaths of many conquistadors.
Mhm.
And it's speculated to be a massive civilization.
Well, just look at the pictures that Jesus showed us of those things that look a lot like Egyptian pyramid type construction. Basically, out the back door.
Well, and you, if you look just not far from here in Springfield, just up the road to St. Louis, right across the river from St. Louis in Cahokia, Illinois, is the Cahokia Mounds. And they believe at one time the Mississippian culture had a massive impact on the whole middle part of the United States. I mean, this was a city of hundreds of thousands of people living in one area, and they had trade routes that went all over North America.
Well, and they've dated that Cahokia mound stuff to, well before the 10th century. There's some stuff there that's, 5th century. It's
If you ever find
really creepy
yourself in
stuff.
St. Louis with some time and you want to find something fascinating, go across the river to Cahokia and look at those mounds. That is amazing.
Mm-hmm. And what's so interesting about some of that stuff too is some of it seems to be even older, and they're finding some metal artifacts that have gradually come to the surface with the rains and stuff like that existed well before we were even in the Bronze Age.
Yeah.
Okay, so where the hell did it come from? I'm sure it wasn't Europeans that brought it.
Well, when we started the whole concept of manifest destiny, how it was our destiny to colonize and move west and bring civilization. There was civilization there long before we ever stepped foot here. But the Smithsonian and a lot of official history have gone so far out of the way to suppress that, because if there was a civilization here before us and we came in and pushed it out and starved them out and killed them with disease, then we're not the good guys in history that everybody wants to think we are, and we're not. There was a standing civilization all across this continent long before our ancestors showed up and started wrecking the place.
History is written by those who win wars.
That is true.
Well, that, and I was going to say, this time period too, it wasn't all that different from our current time. Yeah. There was racism and ethnicism, back then, these Europeans were proud folks. How would these white Europeans feel to know that a civilization of quote unquote savages, people of color, First Nations people, whatever, had better technology, were more advanced. It's kind of hard to call them savages when they got better tech than you got.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Or
Look at a lot of our modern medicines that
they're
we've
just
had
being
today.
more together. Some of these tribes, they were more unified than the Europeans.
Hmm.
And there was no monetary system. Everything was shared. And everyone lived happily with each other for the most part. Of course, there were squabbles between within the tribe. That's normal, and there's the battles between tribes over resources. But aside from that, and the tribes and the civilizations here that was already here was more unified than all of Europe.
Mm-hmm. Probably more so than Europe is today.
Probably.
But we're not.
Crap. We can't even reunite Ireland at this point.
No kidding.
And they'll speak the same language. Yeah, I could get away with that. My family's Irish, but yeah, it's ridiculous.
That sentiment can also be said now between the British and the Scots.
Very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, my family's all Northern Scot. Yeah, yeah. The reason we're here now is because of the Highland clearances.
Well, or even the Scotch and the Irish. They here in the Midwest, they'd like to lump them together, but like in the case of my family, we came over in the early 17th century. We were sold to the English, so my family's been poor white trash for 400 years. It's just the way it was at the time.
Top of the hour to you, DA.
Yep, there we go. Since we're at the top of the hour, let's take a quick break. Robbie, you want to tell us a little bit about Scallywag Tactical? And this would also be a very good time for me to blank my camera and mute my mic and step across the hall. I will be right back.
Scallywag Tactical is another one of our affiliates, a veteran-owned company. Craig and his team make some of the best knives that you're going to find. This is the boarding axe. This is the dew claw. We've got y'all seen all of our knife collections. They're great knives. Got the Jolly Roger. I'm not gonna sit here and flip all of them out again because y'all seen me do it time and time again. They're great knives. No, D, I'm not Irish. Go to Scallywag, look at the knives, and I dare you to find any big brand name knife that's going to be any better, especially for the money, than any of these. I mean, these are some of the best knives that you will ever find anywhere. They've got a bunch of new knives coming in, so they're kind of clearing out some of their back order or their back stock. Go into the blemish blade section, check some of that stuff out. Use code DA Roberts 10 at checkout and get yourself an extra 10% off. Some stuff that's already got some pretty good prices on it. Tell them we sent you. Go check them out.
You mentioned the new stuff, Robbie.
Oh,
this was given to me as a gift recently. I believe it's called the Wahoo,
Yeah.
and it has got the neatest checkered grip I think I've ever seen on one of their knives. I'm not even sure what the stuff's made of, but the thing is wicked sharp, and I've been pretty pleased with it. It's was it? I'm trying to read here. 440C stainless steel, so it's kind of a little different metal blend than the other stuff I'm used to. But this was given to me by DA the other night, and I was like, this is the most unusual damn knife in their collection that I've seen so far.
Well, I also had something I was going to throw in there. I got an email just like it was yesterday or day before from the folks at Scallywag, And during the month of April, when there was promotions and they were giving away the extra 10%, of all the people that worked with Scallywag, we were in the top 5 when it comes to sending people to Scallywag Tactical. And because of
That's
that,
awesome.
as a reward for that, they've extended the additional 10% off through the month of May.
Woohoo!
Oh,
Nice.
that's
There you
sweet.
go.
So now to the end of May, you can still get 20% off your order with using discount code DA Roberts 10.
That's cool. I might need to collect the rest of their folders there, DA.
Yeah, there's still a few I would like to get. I at the moment do not have the funds to appropriate between medical bills, and we're still dealing with the electrical problems at the house, and got to pay into taxes this year. Between all of that, my finances are stretched tighter than a gnat's ass over a rainbow.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I
The
think we're all a
taxes
little
were brutal
financially
this year.
challenged right now. What was that, Wes? I'm sorry.
And taxes this year was brutal for pretty much everyone.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I have to pay up
Yeah.
like $2,000, and this year, when before I didn't have to pay anything. Apparently, there was
Yeah.
a change in the tax code, which it gave more people more money per paycheck, but it made us not pay as much into taxes, and that affected everyone.
Yeah, I'm not gonna throw any numbers around, but if all I owed was $2,000, I would be thrilled. I'll just put it that way.
My
Yeah,
sister,
so
she said that she owes like $3,800.
I got a
Double.
2% raise last year, because that's a thing. And it bumped me up into the next tax bracket. So my taxes went up by 3.5%. So
you end up taking home less.
Yeah, I ended up taking home less. Yeah, I got a 1.5% dock and pay.
You just gotta love that.
Fortunately, I'm married to a teacher who is currently in college. So, God bless my wife for tax sheltering us.
Well, there was a reason I brought up the previous civilizations. I wasn't just bitching that basically Europeans destroyed everything that it was in their path. I wasn't just bitching about that. I was also kind of pointing out that there was a point to this. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. We also we brought just as much death as we did progress. I mean, the technology's better, but damn, at what cost was it? We destroyed an entire way of life. And it's one thing about England. They're certainly responsible for more Independence Day celebrations around the world than anybody else. I'm not sure that's a good thing, but they certainly are the founder of the feast when it comes to Independence Day celebrations in multiple countries, like 200 or something like that. But
Yep.
the point I was trying to bring up by talking about this is the Wechuge, the Skinwalker, all of these, the Ravenmocker, these existed before we were here. The lore goes
Yes.
back centuries. So just because we're just hearing about these things, just because they're starting to become infamous in pop culture, like you can Google Wendigo and you'll find all kinds of stuff. There's Wendigo
Mhm.
gear, there's this, that, and the other. Same thing with Bigfoot. Bigfoot's become almost an icon in pop culture. But these things existed long before any of us ever heard of them. And there's a reason that these things are still held not only with respect, but with fear.
You know what's funny about the Wendigo, though, DA? You can Google all you want. You won't find what the name means. You actually have to find somebody who's a part of that tribe, or someone who's related to that tribe, to actually learn what Wendigo really means. And if people actually knew what the name Wendigo meant, they'd know, oh, that's not a cryptid, because Wendigo means the spirit who devours. The spirit who devours. So right there should stomp out any belief that the Wendigo or Skinwalkers are cryptids, because of their names. The definitions of their names tell you what they are.
In most cases, they started out as human.
Mm-hmm.
Which there again, that foregoes them being a cryptid in any way.
Right. Correct.
The
And
confusion that might happen with them being classified as a cryptid would be, at least for one of the coyote side is that they're being caught at in between transition.
Yeah.
And
And contrary to what some people are claiming on Facebook, there are no good skinwalkers. There are no good Wendigo. There are no
Don't
good.
even get me started. Don't get me started on that no good Wendigo stuff.
West-
DA, oh my god.
But Ryan,
No, know what,
West-
Robbie? No buts. No buts, because you're butt in the fire if you get me started on that, man.
West, you
Part
want
of
to chime in on that?
malevolent cannibalistic spirit sounds good to anybody.
I mean, I'd be excited to be his friend. He'd come over and be like, hey, Ryan, I'm really hungry, dude, and I got to admit, you're looking pretty good today there, buddy. I'd be like, yeah, nope, you got to leave. Go right back the way you came, sir.
Hannibal
I'm on a
Lecter
diet.
might-
I get
might
Ryan
be-
instead of me. All right.
Yeah, like, you get back. You get back.
Right.
Bust out my Celtic cross or my Thor's hammer, whichever one works.
Nope.
DA's gonna be like,
Think
"What's
of
his
that
name
scene-
in the
scene in the
mummy?"
Mummy.
Holding up all those things, chanting different things until something works.
My luck, I wouldn't have the one particular charm that does work. It's be like, oh, great, carried around this big chain for nothing.
Wes, you want to chime in on that about
Jewish.
people believing that Wendigo and other creatures are good?
It's base beliefs. It's all meant to instill fear and to make sure that to make sure people are following the rules, following their traditions. That's its base belief of what it's supposed to do. And for there to being any good, Wendigos or coyotes or whatever. I mean, and there might be that one and offshoot to a possibility, but for a vast majority, they're all bad. They're all evil. It's part of their it's their MO. It's part of them.
Well, just what it takes to become a skinwalker kind of precludes you being a good person.
Yeah.
I mean, becoming a Wendigo, too, you can't be a good person and just engage in cannibalism and think, oh, hey, I'm all right. It's a good deed.
Yeah, like they were dying anyway.
Yeah,
He was asking for it.
They were an asshole.
Yeah.
I just ate them because I didn't want anybody to.
I don't know,
Can't help
fellas.
but think of the resemblance to like the girls that date the bad boys.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a great guy. Really, he's got a good heart.
I can change him.
He's a project.
So
Hillary
it would be
also-
the night of
have
the
to
creeps, though, in a way. Imagine that one of your daughters dating a Wendigo. Good news, your date's here. Bad news, he's a Wendigo.
Hillary Austin says, so do you have to believe in one of these entities to be prey?
No, you don't. I think the
You don't
belief,
have to
though,
believe
kind
in
of
voodoo for it to be effective.
right. But I think the belief, though, if you have that strong belief, that brings a strong fear, and I think they can play off of that fear even more. So the belief would make you more susceptible, at least in my opinion.
Well, but here's I guess this is I don't know if it's a caveat or what. If you don't believe, let's say you've never heard of these things, and you don't believe in it because you've never heard of it. Are you even going to be susceptible to it? I mean, and I don't mean susceptible as in it can or can't harm you, but I mean, are you even going to be on its radar if you're not? Does that make sense?
I would think you would, though. I mean, I'm going to kind of compare it to a movie here, a horror movie. Do you remember one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies where the girl was into fitness and she was always lifting weights and Freddy showed up in her dream? And as he's grabbing the bars, as he's grabbing the bar, she's like, I don't believe in you. And he's like, but I believe in you. So I think it'd be something similar to that, where like the Wendigo or the coyotes just have to know you're there. And, they know you're real. They know you're alive.
By that same token, and I know that was in the later series, in the earlier and then later on in those series. Remember what happened? If people didn't believe in Freddy, he lost his power over them. Just
Right.
throwing that out there, devil's advocate type thing.
Right, but you got to look at it this way too, though, Robbie. With Freddy, he killed the people that did believe in him, and he got to the ones that didn't believe into him after a while because he wasn't strong enough yet. But if he killed enough of the people that actually had that fear for him, he was strong enough to go after the ones that didn't have that fear. So I think with the Wendigo or even the Coyotes, they could hurt those that do believe in them, and then go after those who don't believe in them later on down the line. It's kind of like culling the herd a little bit,
Yeah.
They're opportunistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the opportunity presents itself, they will.
Well,
Go after it.
even if you refuse to believe into something that's real, doesn't mean it can't hurt you. You can step out into traffic and refuse to believe in a semi, and it can still run you down and kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you believe in Bigfoot, that's all well and good until you round a corner in the trail and one grabs you by the neck.
Well, true, but I'm speaking on the spiritual side of it, like going back to the beliefs that if you don't speak its name, you don't invoke it, type thing, like the Rougarou and all this kind of stuff. So
here's something to consider, Robbie. Okay, so
territory.
I'm just
there
playing
is
devil's
a story.
advocate. I'm just throwing that out there for debate.
Yeah.
And
there is a Wendigo story though, where there was a family of settlers in Canada that had a younger daughter. Okay, and a shaman was trying to court the younger daughter, and the father told them, "No, you're not good enough for my daughter." So these were, European settlers that were in Canada. They didn't really believe in the Wendigo. This shaman, feeling like he was jilted, he put a curse on that family. Okay. And with this family, the wife had just given birth to a baby just a couple of weeks prior. All right. And the daughter that was, the one that he was trying to court, she was downstairs doing the chores while the mother was sleeping. And she noticed it was getting very, very late. Okay. Her mom hadn't come down. She hadn't heard her younger sibling make any noises. And so she went to go check on her mom and the baby. She didn't get any movement from the mom. The mom had the blanket up like this. She did see something moving right here at the chest. When she peeled back the blanket, the baby had become a Wendigo. The shaman had cursed that family. So the baby had turned into a Wendigo. The baby wouldn't have any belief of a Wendigo, and yet it became one.
Well, I think Brian got the gist of what I was saying here. Like, he threw another movie in there, Fright Night, when Peter Vincent threw the original one, not the crapping remake. When he threw the cross up, the cross is supposed to stop the vampire, and he said, "You have to have faith for that to work on me."
Yeah, but that's
I'm just saying I'm asking the question of, if you do not believe in this, does it give it the power? That I'm not saying what it can do if it's corporal or not. I'm saying if you don't believe in it, does it have the same power over you as the native tribes who do believe in it? That's what I'm saying. Just like there are people out in the world who have zero clue about native legends.
Mm-hmm.
And if those people happen to wander through, does it have the same power or the same hold over them as it does over the people who know it and believe it? And I'm not saying if this thing is physically in front of them, what it can and can't do to them. I'm saying spiritually and in the mind, do you have to believe? And I think that was the original question of, can it affect you? Can it do anything to you if you do or do not believe in it? Or if you do not,
if you go by Catholicism and Christianity, demons can still harm people that don't believe in demons or Satan himself. So I would think that, yeah, I don't think your belief has much to do with what they can do to you.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm just throwing that question out there, devil's advocate, because somebody asked if do you have to believe in it. I think that's a valid point. There are plenty of people out there who've never heard of this, never knew, or maybe if they've heard about the movie version of it, which we all know is way off there. But if you don't believe in this, can it still have an effect and a power over you?
I would say yeah.
And I mean, I guess the Freddy thing, that's a very good analogy of that. Because in certain instances, if people didn't believe in him or didn't know him or weren't scared of him, he lost all power. And then,
Right.
But just like in the movies, that's that red herring of just depending on what they needed the movie to do.
Called plot armor.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that if these creatures have a basis in reality, which I firmly believe they do, you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
believe in them for them to be able to harm you.
Right. I mean, it's like somebody put in not believing in minds, it'll still blow you up. That was not the question. The question that somebody asked was, can they still harm you if you don't believe in them? And I think what they meant by that question was, can they possess you? Can they control your mind? Can they do any of this stuff that they're supposedly be able to do if you don't believe in them? That was the question. It's not if this thing is physically in front of you, can it still harm? I think that's a no-brainer question. If Bigfoot's standing in front of you and he's pissed off, yeah, he's going to tear you limb for limb, whether you believe in him or not. But people were just not getting the whole gist of the question, which is why I went into it of if this is a black magic type thing, or do you have to believe in it for it to be able to control you, for it to be able to take over or possess, whatever your terminology. I think that was what the original question was.
Right.
I would say, just to err on the side of caution, if you hear stories of these things being in the area, even if you don't believe in them, an ounce of precaution's worth a pound of cure.
Right. It's better to respect something than to tamper with it and have it come at you.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that was what the question was generally, is just, hey, if somebody just doesn't know what these things are and they just happen to bebop through the area, can this thing latch a hold of them and make them do whatever it needs to do?
It was a great question. It brought up some conversation. So yeah, it was a very good question.
And there's countless stories of non-believers becoming believers.
Yeah.
And whatever.
Well, I mean, you can say that in just about anything. I mean, people become non-believers in Christianity and Buddhism and all that stuff. All day, every day.
Rise.
Exactly, but
how many stories have we heard of Bigfoot sightings where somebody said, I've talked to more than a dozen guys who were lifelong deer hunters that said, I didn't believe any of that BS. I'd been in the woods my whole life. I never saw anything until the day I did.
Mm-hmm.
And and there's so many of those guys who went home, sold their hunting gear, and aren't setting foot in the woods again.
Yeah.
Well, at least with the Raven Mocker, you don't really have to worry unless you're dying, So
the Raven Mocker is like
specific. I keep thinking of that line in Ghostbusters where they rattle off all the different things to Winston about his beliefs. He's like, there's a steady paycheck in it. I'll believe anything you say.
Tell him about the Twinkie.
Right. I would think that I would be of the kind of the agnostic cloth with this whole thing, but I guarantee you, once I saw it and I had that little paradigm shift, I become a believer pretty darn quickly.
Yeah.
Casey Calloway says, do they have the same abilities and power over a person that believes or a person that doesn't? I don't know if it would be the same, but I wouldn't rule out their ability to hurt you.
So let's look at it this way.
That was the question. I think that Casey just kind of simplified it. Can you do the same thing to somebody mentally that they could do to some who believes versus somebody who don't believe?
So let's look at it this way, though, especially in the case of the Wendigo, because it's not just going to be a spirit at all times that's trying to possess you, but it can be a Pewaganok, a dream spirit where it can chisel away at your sanity. So you'd be having these nightmares, these really nasty nightmares about Wendigo. After a while, that's going to take a toll on you, don't you think? I mean, after night after night after night of having these grueling, bloody nightmares, you're going to start questioning, whoa, is this thing real that I'm seeing? So I think that would have a role in it, no?
Yeah, and like I'm saying, I think that was the whole general gist of it was, and I think DA hit the nail on the head. Err on the side of caution and always protect yourself, no matter what, because nobody knows every single thing that's out there. There's always going to be something that we don't know And just because, like you said, just because you don't know, it's just like going into a different country, and that different country has certain diseases that you may not be familiar with. It don't mean you go around and not wash your hands and not take showers and not do this. You always have to protect yourself no matter what, whether you know what the threat is or not. But I think that was the general question.
Yeah.
Well, you don't need to even go to a different country. You could just go over to the next state.
Well, that's true, but
When I
Or
was a kid,
even the next city.
when I was a kid, my mother used to say that I would blunder in where angels feared to tread. If somebody said there's snakes down that trail, I didn't give a damn. I just down on it, down I went. And I've come across lots of snakes in my travels, But as I've gotten older, I may have mellowed a little bit with age, but I still will blunder in where angels feared to tread. It's kind of been the hallmark of my life. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to take precautions. If I go in an area that I suspect that, well, hell, if I leave my house, I've got a firearm on. But if I go into an area where I suspect there's going to be problems, I will upscale what I carry. If I'm in an area where I know there's snakes, I'll wear my snake gaiters and I'll take my walking stick. So if I run across one, I can push it out of the way. But just because they're there doesn't mean you shouldn't still enjoy the things you enjoy. You shouldn't still go out and go to these places. You just got to be careful. It's like there's bears in the area. I'm not going to not go into an area of the forest because there's been bear sightings. I'm just going to take precautions and make sure I'm safe.
Something that's 40 cal and larger.
Yeah, exactly. I've got me and 1911 reasons why I feel pretty safe to carry. 1911 reasons I'm okay.
Hey now.
3D
I'm in the process of building my 400 Legend.
Yeah, you definitely got to worry about ticks because as Kuno found out down at LBL, tick-borne illnesses can mess you up.
Lyme disease.
Yeah, make sure you're using a lot of spray. Eat a ton of garlic. I don't generally have.
We don't have
ticks,
a ton of Lyme disease around here, but we got ehrlichiosis out the butt, and it's more commonly tick-borne anyway. It'll make you sick as hell.
Yeah.
We've been treating cases already.
That's making people become allergic to red meats from that Lone Star tick.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the alpha-gal. Yeah.
Tell me, if I can't eat steak, the game's basically over.
Oh yeah.
I consider that a fatal infection.
That's right. We're at the bottom of the hour. Steve, you want to tell us a little bit about Brock Blades?
I guess since he's not here to bust my balls, I might as well look out for Ken. So Brock Blades is a I guess for lack of a better term, a cutlery company. Ken Brock handmakes all of his knives. I think the analogy we use is that Scallywag Tactical's knives are the best production knives you could get. They're good knives, but you buy one of their orcas. Every orca is going to be exactly the same. With Brock stuff, they're all handmade. They're all handcrafted pieces of art, and so they're basically made to order out of some of the best materials. And he's got a few on his site that you can just kind of build or buy as is. You can also order custom. It takes a little longer to get it because these are being handmade, but they are some of the coolest things. We got everything ranging from a claymore for Doc all the way up to fillet knives and everything else. And of course, he's a longtime fan of the channel. The Wild Hunt guys are starting to carry a few of his items. And if you use the discount code Cryptid10 in your order, you can get 10% off at brockblades.com. So we got to make the little tactical midget happy. We love him.
Absolutely.
Nice.
The tactical midget. Him's a little guy just like Doc.
That's right. Doc's
So
teaching a
funny
class.
on the show, listening to the two of them go at each other. It's like watching midget wrestling.
Oh, you ought to see it for real. Like, don't make me step in that crib.
Separate you two and put you in a baby Bjorn.
Yeah.
Wow.
Don't make me get the pack and play out now.
But jumping back to where we were kind of trying to drag the train back on the tracks. Although there are striking similarities between all four of these creatures, there are enough differences where they are not the same. There are a
Right.
lot of people that confuse Wendigo and Skinwalkers, but they are not the same. There are enough differences that you should be aware, not only regional differences, but actual physical differences in the creatures as well.
Yeah, and people got to learn the differences. I mean, it's vital that they know how different each one is and to stop labeling them all as the same thing. I think that's really a foolish thing to do.
And it's also very dangerous to anthropomorphize or try to humanize these things and say, "Oh, I've heard stories where this one's my friend now, and I now have a Wendigo who's a friend."
Right.
That's dangerous at the worst and naive at best, because you spreading stories like that can get somebody killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
All monsters are dangerous. It's not a matter of if, it is when.
Mm-hmm.
If the
Kinda like
opportunity
the guy-
presents itself,
Kind of like
if
the
the
guy they called the
opportunity presents
Grizzly Man.
itself, it will take the opportunity.
Like that guy they called the Grizzly Man up in Alaska. He swore up and down those bears were his friends and they were used to him. And he got too close one too many times and they ate him and his girlfriend.
Well, and to add to your telling the differences between things, I keep thinking of bears. You know, here in Missouri, we have the black bear. You know, you come across a black bear, you make yourself as big and aggressive looking as you can. He'll go the other direction.
Usually.
You go, into a Kentucky, or not Kentucky, rather, to Colorado or north, and you run across a grizzly. You make yourself as big and aggressive as possible. You're food. You're food immediately.
And, well, then you run into the polar bear and they think we're tasty. They are confirmed man eaters.
Yep.
They don't exist off roots and berries. They exist off of, seals, fish, and Eskimos.
It's so funny. Last night, Ashley was talking about the grizzly man. That's so weird. All these coincidences popping up, man.
The grizzly crouton.
Grizzly man is just a great example of people giving human characteristics to a wild animal. I've cited the example of when I was hiking with my friends and running into a grizzly bear. I mean, I was close enough I could have went boop and hit it on the nose, and it looked at me and I looked at it, and we went our separate ways. Now, had it had cubs with it, or it had been right before hibernation, right after hibernation, I would have been at. Yeah, it would have been a whole different world. But the bear wasn't hungry, and it was just one of those chance meetings, and it was like we both had that oh shit look on our face, and we went our separate ways. But under different circumstances, that would have ended very badly for me, no matter how well I was armed, because I was too close to do much other than get my head knocked off. Casey, no, I'm not going to try to pet one. Nope, no, thank you.
Boop.
Nah, we're good.
I'll do that to I'll boop my dog on the nose, but I'm not doing that to a grizzly bear.
Most people aren't brave enough to boop your dog.
Right.
He's a lunkhead, but he's all bark and no bite. At least with me, he is. If somebody tried to get in the house, it'd be a whole different animal. But ED Testament says they also eat whales. Yeah, true.
They pretty much eat anything they come across.
Yeah. But that's the thing, the grizzly man is a perfect opportunity of somebody that assumed that they understood their behavior. But in the end, it was a wild animal. And he was the wrong place, wrong time, and got eaten. You can have 100 interactions with a snake. You run across a snake 100 times on the trail, and you stop and you back away slowly, and the snake goes its own way. But you step on the tail of a copperhead, and that son of a gun will chase you down and bite you again.
I mean, you can literally name hundreds of people in all fields of what, either wildlife biology, herpetology. Steve Irwin, he was probably one of the greatest wildlife conservationists of our time. What happened to him?
On a fluke.
He got to, and it was a fluke, but he got too close to an animal, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that was more careful. He may have looked reckless, but he was careful and he was knowledgeable about everything that but freak things like that can happen. And then you look at who we're talking about the grizzly man. I mean, he was the complete opposite of what Steve Irwin is, or was rather. But then you get people like Chandler Dixon from Chandler's Wildlife. He's out there in India and gets bit by a king cobra, or not a king cobra. I can't remember. Might have been a spitting cobra. Anyway, he got bit by a cobra and almost died. And you got Rodney Fox, who's out there filming great white sharks and almost gets bit in half. I mean, these people that have dedicated their lives to go out there and study these animals, but yet things still happen to them. So who are any of the rest of us who haven't dedicated our lives to this to say, oh, well, that's not dangerous.
Right.
Anytime you go up against anything in nature, whether it be a grizzly bear, Bigfoot, a dogman, you're taking your life in your own hands. So you have to know these. What's the word I'm looking for, Dan? You have to know the extent of what you're getting yourself into. I mean,
be aware of what's in your surroundings.
Yes.
Yeah. And you're right.
If that means taking precautions for grizzly bears, it means taking precautions for grizzly bears. If it means there was Wendigo sightings in that area, it means take precaution for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't, and it doesn't mean it can't hurt you or kill you.
And Brian's right. I mean, yeah, it was a crappy thing that it was a man or a stingray and not a crocodile. But the fact is that just shows that it's not always the animals that you think are the most deadly, like crocs. A stingray, you can probably count on two hands the number of people that have been killed, that reported wise, by stingrays. It's just not something that happens.
Yeah.
And somebody brought up Shark Week. Last year's Shark Week was the first time anybody's ever been bit, or maybe 2 years ago, first time anybody's ever been bit. But it was the jackass guys because they were trying to do a stupid stunt. You do stupid stuff like that, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Yeah, but the whole point of this is when you start messing around in nature. I mean, it's like when I went to the LBL and I sent DA a picture of the bison out there. He's like, "Don't pet the fluffy cow," because how many times have we seen videos in Yellowstone where people, oh look, and then next thing they know, they're flying up over the top of a 30-foot pine tree because this thing has just got pissed off because this idiot has gone over there and started aggravating it. I mean, things like that happen, and when it happens to people who know what they're doing, it's bad. But then when you get people like the grizzly man who think they know what they're doing, people just need to step back and figure out what they're doing before they go do it.
Right.
Exactly. 100%.
There's a question that is brought up for these people that consider these wild animals, these dangerous wild animals, as pets. It's like, what would happen if the food stops?
There you go.
Well, Robbie and I can tell you from crime scenes, people that have pets, when they pass away, your house cat will eat your face and fingers. within a day.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Some dogs will do it, and others will lay down next to you and die beside you. But cats will eat you.
Pomeranians and Chihuahuas will definitely.
Well, those are little bastards. I don't count them as dogs. They're more of purse animals.
Chihuahuas are hell spawns.
Yeah, Kenine takes offense there, DA.
My wife got a couple chihuahuas, and when they wake up, they choose violence.
Yeah.
Well, but see there again, that kind of case in point, we're talking about the dogs that you would think are the most dangerous, your pit bulls and your shepherds, all that kind of stuff. You are way more likely to get bit by a Chihuahua than you are any of them other dogs.
Yep.
But now, if
Actually,
you look at it,
dachshunds have been known to be more bitey than chihuahuas.
Yeah,
Oh,
dachshunds are pretty bitey. And it's always the little dogs that are real bitey.
Mm-hmm.
I love the videos on TikTok of the pit bull owners that are like grabbing the cheeks and shaking the cheeks. The pit bulls are just sitting there looking at them like, "What are you doing?" And the people are just barely putting their finger towards the Chihuahua and they're like, "Ah!" and just almost like tearing their finger off. But it's that look. I guess we're derailing talking about dogs.
Yeah, a little. But it's talking about it's establishing behavior.
Right.
And it's the nature of the animal. Some animals are nurturing animals. Some dogs. Well, the pit bull used to be known as a nursemaid's dog,
Yeah.
because it would help people keep an eye on babies. They were very good tempered and very good dogs for dealing with family and children.
You won't
It's the
find
only
too many more
that
breeds that are
bad.
You won't find too many more breeds that are as loyal as a pit bull.
But all that aside, we're talking about the nature of an animal. What I can do with my pit bull mix Harley, I would not try with a wild wolf or a coyote. I'd
Right.
lose a hand. At the very least, I'd lose fingers.
Even
and
wolf
it's the same.
hybrids.
Yeah, wolf hybrids. You've got to know the nature of what you're dealing with, and it's the same thing with whether you're dealing with something supernatural or a cryptid. You've got to understand what it is you're dealing with. Some of these things are highly territorial. In the case of the Wendigo, in particular, if you wander into its territory, you best be looking for an exit strategy, or you might be on the menu. Understand what it is you're dealing with. Understand what is in your area. I wouldn't go hiking in the Rockies without first finding out what I might run into. Be it snakes, bears, be it what type of ungulates are in the area. You would want to know what's in the area.
I think that goes along with what we've told people before. Knowing the area that you're in, knowing what known flora and fauna are in the area, number one, and what legends are in the area. Because if you're going into the area looking for the legendary stuff, then here comes the big word, it would behoove you to know what you're because if you're going looking for the Bigfoot, but you don't realize that you're walking into Wendigo country, pardon my French, but that's a little stupid to not know that and not know what you need to do if you run across a situation like that.
A great
example. Just the same with skinwalkers too. You don't want to go out into the Arizona desert and just piss off something that's out there and not know about it.
And it's not just limited to cryptids or supernatural beings. The same thing said with humans. Robbie and I are country cops. We're both from fairly rural areas. We spent most of our careers in areas that were mostly rural. If him and I were to go to New York City tomorrow, the first thing I would ask is I would find one of the local cops and say, okay, what areas are safe and what aren't?
Yeah.
I don't want to wander into an area where I'm going to get shot.
Yeah.
Probably be asked how many bullets you got in a firearm.
Well, it's New York, so you probably wouldn't be allowed to carry it anyway.
Yeah, true.
But, in a roundabout way, going through the dogs, analogies and all that kind of stuff, that Who said it? Know before you go. Ashley said it. Man,
Yep.
that's as simplified as you can put it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
What is that saying? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yep.
Isn't that-
Correct.
Or the what they used to say in the army, the 5 P's: proper planning prevents piss poor performance.
There you go.
or kiss.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yep.
Yep.
Roxanne says, DA, does the Wendigo area look different from other areas, forest or woods?
Ooh, not typically. No, it'll actually just the woods will look the same, but you can look for certain ornamentations that Wendigo are known to hang around. That's where you get the stag head. They like to actually hang the stag head from branches with different bones from their prey dangling beneath it. So
Another thing is, if you walk into a section of woods that is absolutely dead quiet, I mean dead quiet, all you hear is your own footfalls and the wind in the trees, it may not be a Wendigo, but it's probably a good idea to get the hell out of there.
right, or if you hear somebody mimicking your voice or a family member that isn't with you, probably get the hell out of there.
Or a weeping woman or a crying child.
No, I don't even contend with that. I hear either or, and I'm like, yep, wasn't that important? Bye.
Wes, I want to ask you about something. What is the basis behind not whistling at night?
Question.
I've been told about it by my mother once, and basically it kind of brings in the spirits like ghosts and cryptids. Is particularly not the Wendigo, the Skinwalker coyotes.
Mhm.
It's a way of attracting them in.
Yep.
Because I had a aunt that lived out by Long Lane, Missouri, and she used to talk about the whistler, so that there would be something that would walk around her house at night whistling.
Hmm.
You never saw it, never tried to get in the house, never bothered her, but on certain nights she would hear something walking around her house on 2 legs whistling.
So it's an instigator, huh?
She said it always had the feeling like it was trying to get her to come outside, and she wasn't
Yeah,
out to do it.
No, actually, like every tribe has a belief about whistling at night. It's not just an Appalachian
Yeah.
thing. No.
Yeah.
Still a good way to put it, though. An evil game of Marco Polo.
Some say don't whistle. Period. Night or day.
Yep.
Yeah, I've heard that that whistling at night can attract a Wendigo to you.
Yeah, that's some of the things that they'll say, but that's when somebody is actually possessed by the Wendigo. They say when there's someone that's, become the Wendigo, not to whistle because he or she will hear that whistle no matter where they are. So that's pretty
Of all of-
creepy.
Yeah, of all 4 of the creatures, the Wendigo, the Skinwalker, the Wechuge, and the Ravenmocker, I think the one you've least got to worry about is the Ravenmocker, because you're probably not going to see it unless you're the intended target.
Well, yeah,
unless
but
it's-
think about it though. If you're dying, though, if you're
Yeah,
dying and you see the Ravenmocker show up and it's abusing you constantly when you're just trying to die peacefully, that's messed up.
It is, but it's not like if you're just camping, and you're fine, you're physically fine. It's not like one's going to show up to torment you. So, I'm not saying you don't have to worry about it at all, but I would say of the 4, that's probably the one that's least likely to be a problem.
Right.
However, the other 3, if you're in their territory, all bets are off.
You're in deep
You're on the
trouble.
menu.
Mhm.
From what I've read, the Wendigos, if there's one in the area, and you know that it's there, it's going out for blood. But for the Skinwalkers, coyotes, they're going to try and chase you off or mess with you, cause as much mental damage as they can, so that you don't come back.
Right. And that's where that corpse powder comes into play.
And how they go about getting the coarse powder, they go to cemeteries or mounds, dig up the bodies, collect the bones, and grind them down. And though I've heard of like someone putting the bones in shotgun shells.
Mhm.
And so like you can make it look tiny little pellets out of them. But who knows? All I know, when it comes to skinwalkers, like if you don't want in the area, just don't speak its name. Don't speak about it. Don't let it know that you're there. If you see it, try to hide it. Try to hide from it.
Okay,
Roxanne's
so
got a
for
good
that question, not necessarily, Roxanne. No, because the Ravenmocker will actually choose people that are dying peaceful deaths. It likes the torture. It likes to create that agony and despair for the people in their last moments. So I think the more at peace that you are with dying, then the Ravenmocker is going to be like, oh, goody, yummy. Let's go after this guy. So
Well, boys, we are coming up on the top of the second hour. It's probably a
Alrighty.
good point to start winding things down. Folks, I appreciate you guys joining us tonight. I think this has been a great topic, and I think we've kind of really touched on a lot of things here that aren't normally touched on. The Raven Mocker and the Wechuge specifically, you just don't see much about those, and I'm really glad that we were able to cover those as well.
yeah,
Um,
me too.
for those who are asking the difference, I think we've pretty well illustrated that point. Because just because these things have similarities does not necessarily mean they're the same thing, and each one has its own proclivities, its own territories, its own habits. So just because you're protected from one doesn't necessarily mean the other. But the real thing is if you're going to be in any area where these things have been cited, just be careful. Um,
Yes.
the old phrase, an ounce of prevention was worth a pound of cure, is very true. You just got to be careful because you never know what's out there. And whether or not you choose to believe in these things, uh, Native American cultures have been believing in them for thousands of years. And to me, that right there is enough to warrant respect for these things. Just
Correct.
because you haven't seen one doesn't mean they're not out there. Same thing with Bigfoot and Dogman. Just because you've never seen one doesn't mean they're not out there. It's kind of like saying, unless you've walked every square foot, every square mile of every forest on the North American continent, it's like walking up to the ocean with a spoon and dipping out a spoonful and go, sharks don't exist because there's none in this spoon.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, it's impossible to prove a negative.
Right. And in a lot of cases, and one we've quoted before, uh, in specifically the billy ape. For the longest time, Western science was like, no, that's native superstition. These things don't exist. Until in 1999, when National Geographic got them on camera, is a close to 6 foot tall upright primate that hunts lions
He uses tools,
and uses tools
drags women and children
out of villages,
out of villages.
highly
The
aggressive.
British Museum changed their tune.
Sounds
a little
like
familiar, doesn't it?
sounds like a lot of things that we talk about on this show, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So again,
Very interesting.
for the longest time, nobody believed in the billy ape, yet it's real. We're finding science is discovering new species all the time. For the most part, most of the things they find are new insect species, but every once in a while we find something big. And considering that in our national parks alone are over 88 million acres of land that we have not been able to fully explore, that's not counting unincorporated areas. That's not counting state parks. That's not counting just timberland. The Mark Twain National Forest in Missouri alone is 3.5 million square acres of undeveloped forest. What could exist in something in a forest that big? Damn near anything.
Whatever it wants
even
to.
on Fort Laramwood, the soldiers seeing something during their yeah expeditions into the woods.
Yeah.
Well, just about every base has something like. I mean, Camp Lejeune up here in North Carolina. There's dogman sightings all over the place around there. Fort McCall. I mean, it's just pull a name out of a hat of a base.
There's lots of Bigfoot sightings near Fort Benning and Fort Stewart, Georgia. Both of those bases have tons of sightings by soldiers and civilians. So again, folks, when it comes to creatures like the Skinwalker, the Wendigo, the Wechuge, or the Raven Mocker, just because you don't believe in them doesn't mean they're not out there. And pretending they aren't out there and burying your head in the sand is a good way to become a victim of one of these things. You don't have to necessarily believe they're there, but you do have to respect the possibility, because the last thing you want to do is just dismiss it and find out you're wrong.
Correct.
Boys, it's been a great panel tonight. Thank you guys for all your insight. Wes, thank you for joining us, brother. It's been an awesome experience. Real great, good insight to this. But as we wind things up, I want to remind folks about the 22 a Day Foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that is 22 too many. That's why we're huge supporters of the Till Valhalla Project. If you have got a friend who's a first responder, law enforcement, firefighter, EMS, corrections, any of the first responders, anyone, medical field. If you know anyone that's in any of those fields or is a veteran or active duty military, reach out to them. The 22nd of every month is the day that we should all put in our calendars as a reminder of the 22 a day, and use the 22nd of the month as the day that you reach out to your friends. It'd be great if you did it more often than that. But if you want to only do it on occasion, remember the 22nd of the month and use that as the day you reach out to everybody, because you never know who's fighting these demons alone. We've all fought them. We've all struggled with them. And it's good to know somebody's there when the demons are knocking down the door. Reach out to your friends and relatives that are first responders or veterans or active duty. Let them know you're thinking about them. Let them know you care about them, because you never know when that text that you sent and said, "Hey, you want to go grab a movie?" is literally the only thing that kept them off the edge that day. We all need that from time to time. So don't forget your veterans and first responders, as we owe a debt to them that we can never pay. And as we start wrapping the show up, I want to bring to mind an old Irish drinking song called "The Parting Glass." We end the show with a toast, and we've been doing it for a while now, and it's something I want to continue doing for a while to come. So if you all have a glass, it doesn't matter what it is. You can have a glass of water, a glass of orange juice, or something stronger. If you guys would join us for the toast as we close out the show. The song, again, is called "The Parting Glass," and it talks about the end of the night. People are going home. But if you read the lyrics, if you listen to the song, if you feel the music, it's talking about more than that. So we'll close it out with this verse. "But since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night, and joy be to you all." Good night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on Ex Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.